Now on Sports Day, full-on footy analysis with Daniel Hoyne. Thanks to Champion Data, the story behind the game.
Hoyne, welcome.
Hello, Kane. Hello, G. How are we?
All
right.
Interesting results, Hoyne. Melbourne.
Hang on a sec. Let's go to the third best player in the league.
I tell you what, though, I'm pretty intimidated here. I never walk in after Kane's just gone through his
gone
observations
bang,
here, and
bang.
he's just gone whack, whack, whack. So
Where does he stack
There's
up?
a lot of positivity in that, don't you? There's a lot of plaudits being handed out.
Where's Toby Greene stack up?
no, I think he's in our top 15, top 10 players in the competition. But I think for Toby, probably the beauty about him is if you go back over a 4 or 5 year period, he's probably the most consistent performer of any player in the competition. You know, Butters is having his year this year. You know, Sinclair's probably had a really good year over the last couple of years. But in terms of consistency for a 5-6 year period, he'd probably be number one player in the competition.
Hoyne, what did the results over the weekend do to the direction of the competition? It felt like we sort of needed that week. Brisbane are vulnerable. Needed to see that performance from Melbourne against a really good side. Port Adelaide just keep building evidence. What was your thoughts on it all?
I think it was a much needed weekend for everyone to have a bit of a reality check that we've been sort of talking about on this show, that the competition is even. And everyone that goes on about Collingwood being miles ahead of anyone else in the competition, you know, I still think Collingwood are the best team in the competition, as I've said for a few weeks, but I don't think the gap between them and the rest is as significant as what some others, probably think, and I think that's probably come into the fall over the last couple of weeks.
So what was your overall observation from the round?
So that's the first thing I wanted to get into. It's not who, it's how. And what I mean by that is my biggest belief over a number of years, it's how you're playing, not who you're actually playing against. So, we talked about the Melbourne profile before last week of being really strong in terms of the number one indicator is, can you actually compete in the turnover game? And they are competing and playing the turnover game by far and away better than anyone else in the competition. And people are still going on about, but they haven't beaten anyone. Well, they lost to Brisbane in Brisbane. They lost to Port in Port. They lost to Fremantle by a goal or so. But their game was actually in reasonable order, apart from offensively. And then you sit back and then you watch yesterday and you see them systematically destroy Collingwood offensively, really. I mean, after that first 15 minutes, Collingwood have kicked 6 goals and, 2 of them have come in the last 2 minutes. They couldn't move the ball from one end of the ground to the other. They got picked off in the midfield of the ground like Melbourne have done better than anyone else in the competition this year. So what they're doing defensively at the moment and what they're doing contest-wise, and that's all you hear Melbourne players talk about. It's all you hear Max Gawn talk about, defence and contest. Well, you got to see that on show yesterday, and they're doing that phase of the game better than anyone else in the competition.
Well done to you for
not
jumping off, Hoyne. There was a lot of people that jumped off the Ds and questioned them. You weren't one of those. Spoke to Michael Hibbert after the game on AFL Nation. He said, what tactically can you give us? What insight can you give us? He said, well, we knew we had to give up something against Collingwood, so we gave them the boundary. Our whole focus was just to protect the corridor, and we knew, they'd get us, but if they got us, it was down the outside. So I wonder if there's any numbers that back that up or whether that is a method that other teams will now go to, and will it force Collingwood to be a bit braver, if that's possible, with their ball movement?
Yeah, it's a fascinating comment because Collingwood gave up the ball 34 times coming out of their back half on the weekend against Melbourne. They haven't got anywhere near that all year, really. The only other time was against Adelaide, where they should have got beaten against Adelaide that day as well. So that's an interesting comment. It actually makes a lot of sense when you watch them. They go through the corridor more than most teams in the competition, so it makes sense with what Melbourne actually tried to do.
Did you think Melbourne pulled their first layer of defence back? So they couldn't get over that first layer?
No, I don't think so. I think they were super aggressive in terms of what they were actually doing defensively, hence why they were able to cut Collingwood off so close to goal and generate close to 60 entries, which Collingwood only give up around about 45 entries per week. So I think it was super aggressive and super good by what Melbourne actually did.
Whilst you're running hot on Melbourne, I've got a couple of people texting through wanting to know about Viney's kicking. Is it improved noticeably this year?
It's been inconsistent game to game, but his kicking yesterday was superb. Hence why he was clearly the highest rated player on the ground.
Yeah, he's composed yesterday. I thought just made good decisions, and that goal was really important that he kicked as well. Summed that up nicely. Let's get into that though, Hoyne. We'll start with your 7 main talking points. The D's kicked 8 goals, 18, which is uncharacteristic.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked about on here probably about a month ago at about round 10, they were shooting the lights out from an accuracy perspective, and they were by far and away kicking above expectation based on where they were having their shots at goal. And history suggests that at some stage that will come back down to the norm or probably below that, if you like. So the last 3 weeks, they've gone at 32% accuracy in front of goal, and it's cost them close to 10 goals on the scoreboard over a 3-week period. So they should have beaten Collingwood by 4 goals based on expected scores, and the week before they should have beaten Carlton by 6 goals based on expected scores. So they are generating relatively difficult shots at goal, but even still, they should have won these games by a little bit more over the last couple of weeks. So, players like Pickett, Petrarca, I heard you mention him before, Kane. His accuracy in front of goal over the last 3 weeks has been well off. And then a player who probably goes under the radar, at least to start the start of the season was Kyle Chandler. His accuracy in front of goal over the last couple of weeks has dropped right off. So they're doing a lot right, across, basically the entire ground. They just need to probably fix up a little bit in terms of what they're doing offensively at the moment.
Got a couple of people questioning whether Melbourne pulled their line of defence back. I think we'll get the vision out on that one, and we'll have another look at that particular one. Okay, moving on from that, we've got the Pies.
Yeah, so just having a look at Collingwood, and you mentioned before, Kane, just whether or not this is a blueprint to beat them, and I think that was really good insight. I didn't hear Michael Hibberd with those comments, so it makes a lot of sense. The other simple factor in terms of how to beat Collingwood is, we know that they want to outnumber you at the contest, and they will send more numbers to one contest and then to the next contest and then to the next contest. But if you can win that contest, they give you really, really good looks. They are below the AFL average in terms of conceding a score when the ball goes in. And the reason why is because they're so aggressive in how they defend, and it's why they only give up 45 entries per week. But if you win that contest against them, they do give you an opportunity to score. So just in real simple terms, if they win the contested possession count by 4 or more in a quarter this year, they've outscored their opposition by 284 points on the scoreboard, which has happened in 19 quarters. If that doesn't happen, they're a break-even team on the scoreboard. So that there, and Melbourne on the weekend, just in that midfield zone, if you like, almost won contested possession by 30 against Collingwood between the arcs. That results in inside 50s, and that results in scoring opportunity. If you can't win that phase of the game against Collingwood, you are done. You will not beat them. That's the only way that you can do it. Think back to Brisbane, like you said before, Kane, especially in that second quarter. That's what they did against them, and then as a result got so many good looks going inside 50, and Melbourne had so many opportunities to probably get a greater scoreboard return on against them yesterday. So that phase of the game, in nice, simple terms, is the absolute starting point in terms of how you can break Collingwood down.
Do they even give you a look at centre bounce because of how aggressive their halfbacks come in, and a couple of times, which Melbourne are really good at, to get out the front of the stoppage because there isn't that protection coming in off the halfback. So they give you a look there too, don't they?
Well, they basically play with 5 defenders.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, Dacos starts as a halfback flanker a lot of the time, or Pendlebury starts as a halfback flanker a lot of the time, but he's not playing as a defender. He's playing as another roaming midfielder, if you like. So that's why their games are so good to watch, because they give you a chance, but when they win it, they're exploding because they've got so many numbers around that contest. You
don't tweet a lot, Hoyne, so when you tweet, it must be important. Gerard, you're not on Twitter, but Hoyne couldn't help himself after Thursday night's display.
I had a feeling the young Saint might get a run.
Yeah, young rising star who's captured your imagination this year.
Oh, I can't stop watching him, Kane, to be perfectly honest. I know we talked about him about round 6 or round 7, that he's flying, but I mean, his season, and in terms of what he's doing this year, is nothing other than phenomenal, really, in terms of what he's been able to do. So he's performing.
Hang on a sec before you go. Simon from Hampton has just texted through. He said, given he had a week off with concussion, then a bye, I would love to know what Owens' return game did for his ratings.
Well, we'll get to that right now. So he's performing 84% above expectation this year for his age and position, which is going to go down as probably the 3rd or 4th best season that we've seen on the relative ratings side of things since 2010, if it keeps going that way. And the phase of the game that is phenomenal for what he's doing at the moment is his ability to be able to win contests outside of clearance, which we spoke about on this show at about round 6 or 7. And we went with it early, and often it can fade away as a youngster comes into the season, and it might drop away. It's getting better. This phase of the game is getting better. So he At the moment, at round 13, in terms of his ability to be able to win contested possessions in general play, it's at the same levels as what Nat Fyfe was in 2015 in his Brownlow year, as what Gazza was in 2013 in his Brownlow year, as what Gazza was in 2012, and Lance Franklin in 2012. They're the only better seasons we've seen at round 13 from a contested possession point of view in this phase of the game.
Is he in your All-Australian team, Hoyne?
He's probably he's not in the All-Australian team for me, but he should be considered in the squad for me. But for the bigger discussion for me is right now he's absolutely by far and away, in my opinion, winning the Rising Star. I just, as well as what Sheasel's going phenomenally well. Ashcroft is doing so much right. Bailey Humphrey's coming with a rush. Love what Wardlaw's doing. But in terms of what this guy's doing, I'm not sure what you thought, Kane, on Thursday night. I thought at three-quarter time, if it wasn't for him and Jack Sinclair, that game could have been over.
Kingy and I spoke about it on Friday morning. We were trying to work out who he plays like. He plays a little bit to me like Heaney. That contest down the line and his ability to win those one-on-ones that you speak of. And I just wonder where he ends up. I think he ends up. We spoke to Corey Enright, didn't we, Gerard, on Thursday, and we asked him that question, where does he end up? And I think they can't wait to get him in the midfield. But at this point, he's so important for them with those contests inside the forward half.
But you can imagine him, and you can see him being that midfielder, I think. Just going in there, being that ball. They probably don't have a point of difference, if you like, in that midfield group at the moment. They're doing a lot right defensively and offensively with the system that Ross has got in place, but they probably don't have a point of difference in there. I think him and Filippo, could be those point of differences.
So could he be a Fyfe-like player in his prime, like that type of guy?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like you look at these numbers, and I'll keep banging on about it. Just what he's doing outside of clearance from a contest perspective. It's got Fyfe written all over it. And Fyfe did start his career playing across half forward until he was ejected into the midfield at about 2010. I
remember the early discussions about Fyfe was he wasn't big enough to get a game. Wasn't muscular. He put plenty on. And they got him for nothing, essentially, didn't they? He was a next-gen kid that they didn't have to – no one challenged him. Didn't have to go. I think a few were thinking about it, but didn't go. A few might have got outvoted, but didn't go.
Gerard, reading something in there.
We better keep moving because Hoyne will speak about Owens for another 20 minutes if we allow him to. All that's on my screen as a talking point is Port Adelaide. Hoyne, I haven't set you up for this. Are they the real deal?
Yeah, they're getting. Well, yeah, they are the real deal. I still think Collingwood and Melbourne, and I'm still, despite what happened with Brisbane on the weekend, still reasonably big on Brisbane. But they're doing a lot right, and I just want to give Port and Hinckley probably a fair bit of credit in terms of what they've been able to do. So they've. For years they've been a clearance and territory based team, which has served them well for the majority. But they haven't been a ball movement team, if you like. So over the last 5 or 6 years, they've only been a top 4 ball movement team once, and that was in 2017, where they probably should have finished a little bit higher up on the ladder. And they have been a corridor team a lot under Hinckley. They just haven't been able to generate the success through that corridor ball movement. But now they are. Yep. And now if you go, just what they're doing offensively, no one turns a chain into a score better than what Port Adelaide do. They attack through their back half ball movement. Their ability to be able to punish from centre bounce, on Friday night was elite. So they've got multiple ways to get you. Their defensive profile for me is still the one that's just holding them back a little bit in terms of rating them against what Melbourne and Collingwood are doing in particular. But offensively at the moment they are probably posing the greatest threat of any team in the competition.
Comparisons for Mitch Owens coming through thick and fast. One regular is James Hird, which wouldn't be a bad one to emulate.
Adam Goods has come through there as well. Probably a little bit smaller, probably a little bit smaller than what Adam Goods is. But I mean, as Kane said, I could talk about him for ages.
All right, let's pull out the board game and play Guess Who, Hoyne.
Yeah, so Guess Who. So I just wanted to throw this to you. Who is this player? AFL number 4 for contested possessions. AFL number 1 for ground ball gets. AFL number 3 for clearances. But on the new rating system, he is the 241st rated player in that competition.
Give us some time to think about it.
Not a bad guess by Kane.
Hoyne, what were the numbers again when you probed us with Guess Who?
So this player is AFL number 4 for contested possessions. He's AFL number 1 for ground ball gets. He's AFL number 3 for clearances. But on the new rating system that we've got in place, he's the 241st rated player in the competition.
Jared, have you cheated on this, Jared?
I've had 4 goes. I've had 4 goes. I've got close, evidently.
4, I reckon there's about 14 you've had here.
He wouldn't be a ruckman, would he?
No.
Can I have one more go?
Yes, you can have one more.
I said Sam Walsh. It clearly wasn't Sam Walsh. Is it James Worpel?
James Worpel, not a bad guess given the profile, but it's not James Worpel. Would you like me to reveal who this player is?
Yes, please.
He's a Brownlow medalist.
Oh,
Lachie Neale.
wow.
So Lachie Neale in our new rating system is a 241st rated player, and there is one simple reason. He's AFL number 6 in terms of impact from a ball-winning perspective, clearly by his contested possessions and ground ball there. But he is rated as the 354th best player from a ball use perspective. And I'll tell you why. His kicking this year is 11% below expectation, making him the 3rd worst kick in the competition this year. And his kicking inside 50 is 15% below expectation, making him the worst kick going inside 50 of any player in the competition. He's had 10 shots at goal this year for 1 goal. His ball use, and I said to G during the break, Kane, I was going to go with this last week, but I held back. And watching him on Saturday, I was just intrigued to see what it was like, and it was the same profile again. His numbers look good on the surface, but the impact that he was having from a ball use perspective, it's just not the same player that we've seen over the last couple of years. So he's performing below expectation this year, which is
what
the
was
first
he
time
last year?
This is the first time he's done that. I'll have to get those numbers for you, but it was a lot. It was a lot higher up than what he's actually doing this year.
Is Cripps the worst kick in the competition? Who have you, so you said Neale was the 3rd worst. Sorry to give you a question without notice, but I just thought I'd ask the question of who was
had
one
Bailey
and
Smith
2.
in the gun last week with his kicks inside forward 50.
I did. Come back to me. I'll give that to you before the show's out.
Get back to you.
I don't want to hang some poor bugger without double checking it.
We just got to tell you about the Bunnings at Croydon because they're hosting a power tool event on Thursday, the 15th of June. Plenty of great tax time deals, product demos, and giveaways in the Bunnings toolbox. Daniel Hoyne is working his way through the 7 main talking points, and we'll get to your questions. Lots of those coming through very, very shortly. You've 6th talking point from the round is the Bombers.
Sorry, just before that, I've just quickly got it here for you. Andrew Gaff is the worst kick in the competition this year. The 2nd worst kick in the competition this year is Miles Bergman from Port Adelaide. His intercept game going extremely well.
Jeez, I would have thought Bergman is...
he's kicking 13% below expectation.
Come on, Miles.
He's a good-looking misser.
Yeah, he's a stylish misser. He's a stylish misser, as Kingy would say.
He's going to dock him $50,000 off his new contract that he's going to get. Tell us about the Bombers.
So just getting back to what I said at the start of the show around Melbourne, and it's more how you're playing, not who you're playing. This is the reverse for me in terms of what Essendon are doing at the moment, and it's a great story. 8-5, they're probably every chance to play finals, whether or not they do or not. I'm not too sure, but they've put themselves in a great position. But the reality is, the way that they're playing at the moment, history will say it's a far from a sustainable brand of footy on the weekend. So based on accuracy, they should have lost that game by a goal, 85 points to 79. So, if Carlton had have kicked to expectation, 85 points, Essendon are giving up 85 points against a team who hasn't been able to score for multiple weeks now is a concern. Carlton haven't been able to move the footy for the last 7 or 8 weeks of the season. 3rd worst ball movement team in the competition in terms of going one end of the ground to the other. They went from D50 to inside 50 39% of the time. That's Carlton's best ball movement game of the season this year. 28 shots to 23 shots for Carlton on the weekend against Essendon. They win contested possessions by 17. Essendon only pick off Carlton in that midfield zone of the ground 29 times. Compare that to Melbourne's 50 against Collingwood on the weekend. We talk about defensive profiles being the ones that hold up. It's only West Coast have conceded more inside 50s than what Essendon has this year. And no team has won the ball back less in their forward half of the ground than what Essendon has.
So if Brad Scott was listening to this, I'm sure he'd be saying it takes more than 1 year to educate and get right.
No, it's 100%. And all all I'm doing is just putting on the table here is just cool your jets a little bit in terms of what Essendon are doing, in terms of how far they can go and what have you. This isn't about a 2023 camp. And I heard Brad Scott say at the start of the season that he wasn't too sure where this team was going to get to, given that they are relatively young, they are a new group with a new coach and a new system, that it's going to take time to learn. So the fact that they are 8 and 5 is a huge positive from a wins and loss perspective. But I just think when you're assessing Essendon from a big picture perspective, cool the jets a little bit. They've got a long way to go in terms of whether or not they can compete and actually get deep into finals contention.
Yep, and still got West Coast and North to come after having them recently in their run of 4 wins in a row. Let's talk about the Blues, Hoyne, the team that's under the most pressure this year. Yeah,
and they're probably getting sick of talking about Carlton, to be honest. But
based on what you just said, they did a lot right.
Well, Ash Hanson's comments pre-game, really sort of hit home to me when he said that they wanted to release the shackles, and it might look a bit messy and it might look a bit clunky, but we're going to try and release it, and we're going to try and get some offensive sort of return, if you like. So as I said, that was Carlton's best ball movement game of the season in terms of going one end of the ground to the other. That was the most they've accessed and used the corridor this season. They only took 78 marks, which is their second lowest of the season. So for so long they've been a sort of a control the ball, high marking, boring sort of to watch team behind the footy. They were able to gain almost 250 metres by hand this year, which was their third most of any in any game this year. They generated 56 entries against Essendon, which was their third most of the year. The reality was that just their skill level and their execution by foot was horrendous. So to only go at 63% by foot, when Essendon's pressure was okay, but it wasn't elite levels, if you like. That was the issue in their game, and whether or not they just don't have the elite ball users across the field and the speed to be able to match that is probably the bigger question. But they did try to actually unlock a little bit of offensive return on the weekend. They just as I said, they just don't have the skill to be able to back that up and to be able to get the absolute scoreboard return.
That was Hoyne's 7 main talking points for the round. Each week, Hoyne looks at who the coaches missed with their votes and marries it up with who champion data rated individually from the games. Let's start on Thursday night, Hoyne.
Yeah, so James Rowbottom, we had him as the highest rated player on the ground on the weekend. It was actually his highest rated game of his career, 17 contested possessions and 9 clearances, both career high numbers, but didn't get a vote from
no love
coaches
whatsoever. He's had a good season, Florent. He's actually building was it Florent?
No.
Rowbottom. He's building a good career, third in the best and fairest last year.
Yeah.
He's an outstanding young get from the Swans. Who else?
So Connor Rosie on Friday night. This was another really good example of just maximum damage from not as many disposals as what Connor can get sometimes. So we had him as the highest rated player on the ground. He did get 2 votes, but there were I think 4 or 5 others that actually got
Butters
votes.
got 10, Libber got 8.
So he actually had 23 disposals, which was the lowest disposal count for him for 6 weeks. But his ability to be able to slice you through ball use was so important. And then the other thing on his game that really stood out on Friday night was his pressure. I mean, that was the second best pressure match that he's actually had this year for himself as well. So a really rounded performance there for Connor.
Just missed 2 set shot goals, Connor Rosie, which if he nailed, that's probably would have sent him up a level in his game. There's a big fella on the list. You don't see this very often.
Yeah, no, I don't see this. Yeah, no, too often at all. But Lloyd Meek against Brisbane on the weekend.
Daisy's man, Gerard, isn't it?
It would be. He's inheriting the earth right now.
So he was the highest rated ruckman for the round just gone. Actually, we had him as the highest rated player on the ground. Didn't get a vote from the coaches. Yeah. His ruck work was the 4th best of any ruckman in the competition this weekend. His defensive actions were actually the 6th best of any ruckman in the competition as well, and his ability to be able to win contest and win clearance was the best of any ruckman in the competition as
Connor
well.
McDonald got the 9 votes there. Lloyd Meek got brushed.
Yeah, so if he can keep going down that path just with that young midfield group, it could actually become quite rounded, quite a rounded group.
Connor Coleman Jones.
Coleman Jones. Tongue twister.
I see so much upside in him.
I'm a bit
like me, but he's just got to work harder. He's got to train with the midfielders and do more kilometres and bust his guts, because if he's around the ball, he's dangerous.
Yeah, and he does get his hands, to the ball in quite a lot of contests as well. So just be able to finish off that work is a.
I'm going to call him CCJ from now on.
Just do that.
Yeah, that's a lot easier.
But I'm with you. He's a big man, and when he goes up to mark the footy, he's got this big imposing presence, and they just sort of bounce off him. But he doesn't get to enough contests. But you'd definitely be persisting with him, which I know they will, because they've signed him up for a long time. Angus Brayshaw started the year slowly, but he started to come back into good form. But the coaches didn't recognise his game.
Yeah, absolutely, Kane. So he didn't get a vote on the weekend, but we had him as the third highest rated player on the ground, and I reckon you just summed it up there perfectly. I mean, his first 8 or 9 weeks are probably systematic of what Fremantle are actually doing, but his ability, and we talked about Fremantle's ground ball issues, and that was an issue, ironically, on the weekend against Richmond, but it wasn't, through a lack of ground ball wins on Brayshaw's behalf. But he's had 30 ground ball gets the last 3 weeks. He had 30 ground ball gets in the previous 7 weeks.
If they make the finals, Fremantle, how are they tracking?
No, they don't make it.
Don't make it?
No.
Do Richmond make the finals?
No.
Do they go close?
No.
Oh.
No, we're straight to the point here.
Do Essendon make the finals?
No.
Do Adelaide make the finals?
Yes. I think Adelaide. I don't know how many teams I actually put a line through there.
You've just ruled
there
out
might
a
only
few.
be 7 teams that play finals. But yeah, no, I don't.
Is that a new segment? Yes or no? Who makes the finals at Hoyne?
I actually like it. Daniel Lloyd, is it? Yeah, a lot of lesser. Well, I say lesser lights respectfully, because he's an important player, but played well. Hoyne, did he? And the coaches overlooked him.
Yeah, highest rated player on the ground on the weekend. Played a slightly different role for GWS. 21 disposals, but his ability to be able to win contests and actually get up the ground and play, more midfield minutes is what we don't usually see from Daniel. So 13 contested possessions, a career high there for him. So just a few players there that probably went under the radar.
Okay, that's who the coaches stuffed up in their votes.